Welcome to Front and Center with Jacquie Jordan.
Hi, Jacquie Jordan. Melissa Joan Hart here. I hear you have a new iHeartRadio podcast, Front and Center. That's awesome. So, here's a toast to all the people making an impact.
This is Front and Center with your host, Jacquie Jordan.
Entertainment and pop culture expert Jacquie Jordan is with us.
Two-time Emmy-nominated Hollywood producer Jacquie Jordan.
We are the show where we talk with the change agents, the storytellers, and the activators from behind the scenes, making impacts. And joining me is co-host Phillip Barbb. With show producer Stephanie Cobian.
I think the number is like less than 10% of the employees even know what the values are at a company.
Having that amount of self-awareness is half the battle.
For me, it's everything's happening right now, all possibilities in different dimensions of time.
We're back with Front and Center, and we are the show talking to change agents and activators. And taking her seat with us front and center today is my friend Emmy Johnson of Emmy Johnson Company, former film executive and now an integrator. So tell us, we just left talking about an integrator, but you're owning that word as a business moniker, which I really love, as a title. Like Chief Inspirational Officer we're seeing these days.
Right, exactly.
As an integrator, what does that mean to you?
So for an integrator, what I've done is I work with businesses and individuals and influencers and help integrate their values, first define the values and clarify them, and then integrate those values in all aspects of the business. So it gets really clear because it can be everything from company culture to policies to strategic partnerships to how you want to live your life. Because when we can come from our values, everything becomes much clearer, decisions get easier, and we get to be more productive and out there in the world. And it takes a holistic approach to business, which I believe is more 21st century than the past century.
What are your observations between the 21st century corporate values and the current structures we're exiting?
Good question. A lot of times people, when I say the word values, they gloss over. There becomes a thing like, what? Because we haven't been talking about it as much. But when I start to kind of dial deep and ask people what they want to do, the conversation gets much more meaningful. And I've had a lot of fun. I work with Amber Valletta, who's an actress and a supermodel, and she came to me when she wanted something more than just acting and being a model and didn't know what she wanted to do. So we started to define her values. And in that process, it became very, very clear how much environmentalism and sustainability was important to her. So then we launched together 2 businesses for her in sustainable fashion. And, in that work, she's built up her thought leadership. They became new revenue streams and just doing great work out there. And
you're kind of tackling the issue of sustainability within the fashion industry. Can you give us an example of how you're provoking this disruption? Because it's a good example of how your business operates.
The intent is to disrupt. So the fashion industry is a huge industry. It's $3 trillion a year. It employs millions and millions of people. And it also is one of the most resource-intense industries in the world. And most people don't know that. People think they just want to go out and fashion's also amazing. It's creative. What do we want to wear? How do I want to express myself? And we all wear clothes. So it's something that touches all of us. But we're making far more clothes than people need in their life. And people believe clothes are disposable and throwing them in the trash. But there's an enormous amount of waste in fashion. And there's also a lot of toxicity in the products that uses land, and cotton, which is considered a natural plant, uses so much water to grow, and it's heavy use of pesticides. So there's a lot of problems in fashion. And
you wouldn't know that. Have you ever thought about that, Phil?
Never.
Ever.
Never
Yeah.
once.
No.
Like you're saying it, and I'm like,
I've never thought about that.
I never thought of where this T-shirt came from.
Right.
Ever.
Ever.
It's on the
How
rack.
long it took to make.
Like $14.99 or lower, I'm in. But that was it.
I mean, I might have an idea about like, is it American made or is it slave labor made?
Right.
That's probably the farthest I've gone on a clothing question.
Yes. And I mean, but this is to the point Stephanie was saying earlier about transparency, because we're asking for more companies to be transparent about their supply chains. Because in fashion, those supply chains are really, really long. And so things can be made from all over the world. And in fact, unfortunately, LA has some of the worst factories here. And I haven't gone a deep dive into that, but there's more to be exposed there. And I hear that from the young fashion designers that I meet with Amber locally, that they don't want to produce here because the risk of it not being, well made here is a concern.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's just interesting what we think of as the problem versus the problem.
The only other big one
I'm waiting for fur to go away.
Yeah,
I don't
we're
want to
like,
see
when
a
is that
single
right?
celebrity
Fashion.
in fur.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah.
2019, 20, 21. Stop it.
We talk about that one.
Yeah.
One of the things that, and I don't know if this really ties in with what we were talking about earlier, but I'm very curious to see, you talk about values with corporations. And how often are you finding, is there a conflict of the corporation's values with the individuals inside of that corporation's values as an individual person? And how often do you notice that happening with some of the people you work with?
Absolutely. I mean, I think within the industries, I'll start kind of broader first, which is, within the industry. So, Amber deciding to do something different in there. I also work with a nurse practitioner who saw a problem in the health industry. So she still works as a nurse practitioner, but wants to do something called Bridge Gap in the medical field to help pregnant women go through, a healthy prenatal where they get emotional support, not just going to check off a box of a list of things. So within the industries, there are these gaps that are getting created. And then within the companies, I would say it's the same thing. I think the number is like less than 10% of the employees even know what the values are at a company. Mm-hmm. They're used to kind of being on the wall, not actually integrated.
Yeah.
Where we talk about operations, but we talk about growth and scale and profitability, and all these things are great, but at what expense? And to your point earlier of the extremes, the 21st century thinking is that you can have profit and do well to the earth and do well to people, and it's called triple bottom line. Also, what I've heard more recently, and it's in the news, is employees standing up. And there was concern at different big companies all over this country in particular, where the employees are voicing their concerns about behaviors. And Salesforce.com is a great example where the employees inside were angry, and also out externally, because their software was being used by ICE. And so they were not happy about that.
When you say employees are speaking up, we spoke on another podcast episode about generational gaps. Why is that you're seeing more vocalness necessarily? Is it because younger people are being more vocal?
Absolutely, yeah. The millennials and Gen Z. Yeah. Salesforce.com did do some research, and 86% of customers or consumers care about a company's ethics. I mean, that's a huge number. It means it makes good business sense to think about your values. And in addition to that, it's like 90% of millennials will pay attention to a company's sustainability or their transparency factor, or does a product is it made from renewable resources? And what's amazing is there are solutions for so many of the problems that we have today. I always say that the whole
planet, everything could be, the solutions are available.
The solutions are available. It's that and I think the important thing is that we all recognize that we are making choices and voting with our dollars as much as we're hopefully voting in elections, but all the time. And it is difficult because it is emailing and, texting or tweeting CEOs and asking them about their companies, like exactly what you were talking about. That's how they know and get pressure to change. If there's no pressure to change, the status quo will stay the same. And then the question is, what happens to all of us?
And then, I think apathy can creep in, and people just look, I just want to go to work. I don't want to get my paycheck, and I don't want to worry about it, Or like you said, with like the mission, what are the values and who's holding each other accountable? I mean, I think even, I remember reading like Enron's motto was like respect, integrity, communication, and excellence.
Right.
But it's like, who are the people that are holding each other accountable? And I guess it is we're entering a new place in business where it's no longer just this from the top trickle down. Like there is, because of social media, a little bit of this platform for people at all aspects to have their ability to speak up.
The media used to play a role in exposing the injustices of businesses. Now it's kind of, because we have social media, it's kind of sometimes tearing from the inside out. But you talk about the disconnection.
Yes. I mean, I talk a lot about connecting the disconnect. I think people feel the disconnect more than they even understand where it's coming from. And part of why integration is so key is because that helps realign what's happening. And get it off the wall, because it doesn't really mean anything up there if there's no kind of moral compass to it. And the UN in 2015 came out with 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which is basically the idea that you can have profit, you can also have inclusion and social fairness, as well as take care of the planet. So that idea of triple bottom line. And if we can use those as guideposts of how to go forward, then it makes a lot more sense and and we'll have a planet actually to give to our children.
And the tough thing is, but then how do you deal with someone that is like, you know what? No, like, I want to make my money, right? And I'm not worried about, like, I'm not going to do anything to make it terrible, but I'm not. No, I don't feel a social pull to go out and do these things. And I guess then that's where the power of the consumer comes in, I guess.
The voting with the dollars and the pressure. I mean, there are companies still pumping a bunch of CO2 out in the world. And we know how dangerous that is.
I even think with the plastic bottle companies, the LA Times just did a story that the whole recyclable market has gone down. People aren't paying attention, or they don't want to pay the elevation in price to have recyclable products that are made from plastic. So now we're back to plastic again. But I've always simply felt, just hold the water companies responsible for their own cleanup, period.
Right.
Or we then will all just pick up our own water bottles and fill them ourselves. Like, to me, it's very simple, and cut and dry. But
who makes that rule? And
who enforces it? Is it the local city?
Yeah, and so really we have to take as consumers and as customers, we have to take our power.
Well, as a consumer, though, at the same time, there's times where you may be stuck where, you're trying to think of a quick example. Shoes, we'll say. Like, people are, like, I know some vegans who also don't wear, like leather. And sometimes you run out of, if you can't, like, we live in Los Angeles. How do you live without a car? But, you can't necessarily afford a Tesla or something. So, there's also catch-22 is, how do I help, but I still feel pigeonholed at certain times to use a plastic water bottle, or I have to get gas in my car to get work.
And here, do you have to be all in 100% completely?
Yeah, I don't think
because I think then it opens up the door for people that want to be anti the change. It's like, oh, well, you're just a hypocrite. And I think that sometimes that black and white, that all or nothing, we can kind of...
You could get really militant about,
exactly,
and then it's not...
Absolutely.
It's just because it's a great point. It's not possible to be in Los Angeles without that.
And that's why it's important to have, like, valued influencers like Amber speaking out, because she does walk that line between... It takes courage to stand up and say, I'm going to do something about fashion sustainability and not do it 100% all the time. It's just moving the needle, and we really caution against perfectionistic paralysis for both the companies and as individuals, so that you don't do nothing.
Yeah.
Progress rather than perfection.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then sometimes some people have to be the polarity integrator.
Right.
On something. PETA takes the polarity integration stance on animals. But if they weren't so extreme in the rescue space, then the middle ground would not really have done so well. Like, they've taken such an extreme.
That's really,
Right.
But it's thank goodness in a weird way that they've held that bizarre position, because now we're all aware, and all of the in-between rescues have really been able to balance out and bring a lot of animal awareness to the whole violations of neglect and abandonment and abuse we have here on animals.
And I think, to get back to saying, too, why we all as individuals or business owners, really it's important to be clear about our own values and start there, because it's not an easy thing to do. I mean, I think we've established that, whether you're a small company, an individual, or a big company. But when we're clear, when we take the time to make those values clear and then and integrate them into how we live our lives, then we have something on which to grow.
I would love this for someone that's hearing this and watching this and hearing you, and they look at their own lives and they go, you know what, actually, I don't know what my values are. I don't know if I've ever really sat and thought about that. What is an exercise that somebody could do at home to really
Right.
start to get this figured out for themselves.
Or questions they can ask.
They can ask themselves, what matters to me, and just write down 10 things or 20 things, and then circle the ones that are similar and just dial down. And then also start looking out at the world. There are companies that have great values out there, and there's a lot of conversation about values that is happening, and start researching who has values that align with what I believe in, and then start buying from those companies, supporting those companies too. So, but really just sitting down, values are what matters to me, and how do I want to be and interact with the world around me. So starting with that, and then really asking, once you have your list, it's really great to say, how do these exist? How do these look like in my life today? And how can they look in my life today? So there's a process to go through that I do with small groups or individuals that's really helpful, but it's just really a simple question. And and doing it with an inquiry, not like there's someone really who knows the right answer sitting above you and judging you for you saying like play is a value of mine. No, play is awesome. If we don't play, that's where so much creativity comes from. So it's really getting rid of the critic and the judgment and allowing the process to unfold.
Amy, we're an inspirational show on Front and Center. We like to share inspiring messages and photos, and we call it a photospire. Is there a particular photo maybe you've taken and shared, or perhaps seen on social media that is like your photospire in the last 30 days that you can share with us?
It's my daughters in the backyard of my house that I took earlier this summer. And I want to post that because it's just a moment in time with them. They're 14 and 16. And it is about them. And there's a Native American saying that we did not inherit this planet, this earth, from our ancestors. We're borrowing it from our children. And when I think about my children, that is part of my own personal inspiration.
Well, thank you so much for being an integrator, Amy Johnson of Amy Johnson & Company, and we will be right back. If you could activate big business with consciousness, what changes would you like to see happen? Find out what these powerhouses have to say.
The number I heard recently was that 80% of all new small businesses are started by women.
I am just kind of creating a container to your inner genius.
If you are doing extraordinary things from behind the scenes, from any walk of life, we'd love to hear from you. Send us a note on our website, frontandcenterpodcast.com. If you're ready to write that book you've been putting off, join us at desperatpublishing.com for a how-to step-by-step online course that shares your publishing options and paces you on how to structure your book.
Alex Detail was a child genius who saved the world from the evil harvesters. But a decade later, this mysterious alien force has returned, and Alex is no longer a prodigy. Now, in order to save the world again, he must survive his kidnapping, find his evil clone, and get his ship to the planet Pluto, where he will uncover the universe's ultimate power. Alex Detail's Revolution, a thrilling new novel by Darren Campo. Buy online or wherever books are sold.